Today, I'll be giving you a full review of the 2017 Chevy Volt plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. We've been driving it for about 3 years and put 34,000 miles on it, and we'll give you an idea of what it's like and what's different from a conventional vehicle. This is the 2017 Chevy Volt, the LT version. That's the lower level trim. So I'm going to go ahead and start this up and give you an idea of what this looks like here. So you can see we have a little over 61,000 miles on it, and we have a full charge, which is indicated by the green right here, and we have full battery or full gas as well. It's indicated by the blue, and it's showing about 55 miles on the left right here for the EV range, and then on the right it's showing about 338 miles on the fuel as well, in the gas. So we have just about 400 miles that we can drive before we'd have to find either a charger or a gas station. Either way works just fine in this vehicle. That 55 miles is very similar to when we purchased the vehicle. We bought it off of a lease. It had about 27,000 miles on it at the time, and it was about 3 years old, and now it's 6 years old. So we've run it for, we've doubled the mileage, so we've run it for about 34,000 miles, and we've had it, the same amount of time as well. And we haven't seen the EV range drop at all, so we're in really good shape there, and we don't have any concerns with the degradation of the EV range. We typically will get, in the worst conditions, we'll get around 40 couple miles for the charge, and in the best conditions, we can hit right at 60 miles for the charge. So we do get the EV range in some of the instances, and sometimes more and sometimes less. The cold seems to be the worst for it. So when it's trying to keep itself warm and that type of thing, that's when we tend to really get the lower EV range, because you're running the heat for the inside and that type of thing as well. So that's a quick overview of the instrument panel over here with the amount of range that we have. And looking at the vehicle overall, it's a relatively standard. You have the push button ignition here, so you have the key fob. You don't actually put the key in, but it's pretty standard at this point. It has the Apple CarPlay, Android Auto built into the infotainment center. Overall, generally pretty standard stuff. The one thing I'd want to point out here is the shifter. It goes down to the drive and low, but the low on the plug-in hybrids tends to be a lot more of the aggressive regeneration, where it's applying, not brakes, but slowing your car down, regenerating power. So sending the energy back to the battery that you can use it again, and slow you down that way. So we use the low actually as our normal driving, and it works out really well. And then also another item to point out that seems to be relatively unique on the Chevy Volt compared to a lot of the other plug-in hybrids is this paddle right here. So when you're driving, if you pull this paddle, it actually engages additional regenerative braking. So if you're going up to a stop sign and you pull this and just let off the gas, the accelerator, you'll feel pretty aggressive regenerating of the energy there. And a lot of people, when I'm doing that while I'm driving, they think we apply the brakes, but we don't. So we can actually slow down all the way to around 1 mile per hour without using any standard brakes, traditional brakes. So I think that this is a really good feature. I like that a lot. The only issue with this is it's connected to the steering wheel. So when you're turning, it sometimes will end up being up here. If you turn the steering wheel, it'll be up here. So it's not really intuitive, like it's always at the same spot. You have to sort of hunt for it sometimes. So that's another unique feature of this vehicle. The Chevy Volt does not have the frunk that some of the other vehicles do, because it's a plug-in hybrid. So this isn't a situation where we have the extra frunk space from the engine not being there, because it actually does have a generator underneath the hood that powers the battery from the gas. So we don't have that particular space there. Actually, that's probably the biggest complaint that we've had with the Volt, is the lack of space in it. That's passenger space as well as the cargo space. So we're looking at the back seat here. The one item that's really interesting is this is a 3 seat back seat, so it's 5 total seats. But this middle seat, you're actually straddling the cup holders to sit there. So it's certainly, you could sit there, and we have used it, but when you're talking about a longer trip, it's not really feasible, especially for anybody larger, to sit in that middle seat where you're straddling this cup holder here and trying to get comfortable. And particularly with, you know, a little booster seat there, takes up a lot of space, and there's not a lot of hip room or, you know, leg room, foot room, even shoulder and head you get very limited on as well. So it's not like you can scoot a certain way and get more space there. So one thing to keep in mind, if you're looking at the Gen 2 that has the 5 seats in the back, that one seat in the middle, it's challenging to use, we'll say. So I thought, since I mentioned that there was no frunk here, I would go ahead and show you under the hood. So you can see there really isn't any space that we could utilize to, you know, have a frunk. You know, the engineers could have utilized to have a frunk, just because of the, you know, two motors, or the 2 setups that they have, the battery and the gas. So you can see, you know, the generator here, and then off to the side, you can see the high voltage wires, the orange wires, you know, coming in as well. And then they're back, if you look back in here, there's some back in there as well. So you can see where the electric components are, as well as the gas components, and really it just fills up under the hood. So there's not room for a frunk, which is why they didn't put it in this particular model with the plug-in hybrid here. And we have the trunk space as well. Again, not very spacious. We do have the hatchback here, but that doesn't do a whole lot for us. We did some space testing recently on, you know, how much we could actually get in this, and we did get a stroller across the front, but we had to pull the tires off of this jogging stroller. So we pulled that off, and we had one large piece of luggage, so a checked bag is what we had in here. That fit across the back with the stroller, but that was really maxed out. We couldn't get a carry-on with that. The top comes down too far. The stroller, it's a 1-person stroller, a 1-child stroller, but it's still relatively large. So something to keep in mind, that there's not a whole lot of trunk space here either. And you can see, you know, this is the whole vehicle, all the passenger and cargo space. It's not very large. And this is really our one complaint. We actually liked the way it drove. You know, we liked having the plug-in hybrid on this one, but we didn't like that there was just a lack of space. And we also don't like sitting low in a car, which is obviously what you're going to be doing in this one. But just keep that in mind as well, that not a lot of space and you're sitting low. And those are really our largest complaints with this. We want to show the energy information and infotainment center too. So if you click on the energy, you can go in, and this is a pretty neat illustration of what's going on right now. I'm just sitting still, so you don't see any real action here. But if you have the electric charging everything, you know, you see the flow, you see it flowing out to the tires. If you have the gas charging it, or you know, being utilized to power everything, you'll see the flow coming from there and going out to the tires is appropriate. If you have both, you'll actually see both of them coming and going out to the tires that are, you know, being used. And then finally, once you start slowing down or using the regen, you actually see the power coming the other way and flowing back through and going back to the battery that way. So it's a pretty neat view while you're driving of what's actually happening, especially when you're used to things and you're trying to figure out, is the engine running? Are we using battery? Are we charging the battery? Exactly what's going on. This is a great view here. And then on the info tab, you can see information regarding the miles per gallon. This is really not what I would call miles per gallon, because it's combining the electric miles plus the gas miles. So that's something I think is an odd way to put it, but it's really useful right here. When we're saying 190 miles per gallon, we get, about 42 miles per gallon when we're running just gas. So we can back into the approximate number of electric miles that we've run, and I have the information regarding the individual that owned it before us, so we can, I know what it was when we received the vehicle, the mileage and the lifetime miles per gallon. So I can back into what they did and what we did, and then the total for the car. So I'll include that next here once we finish with the infotainment energy information, because I think that's an interesting aspect, particularly because this vehicle only gets 50 couple miles per charge. How far do we really, go on that versus how much do we need to use gas over the course of the last 3 years, which is probably a pretty good sample size for our family. A couple other views that you have here when we switch. This is the energy usage. Obviously, I'm sitting still right now, so you see the climate's not doing well. The outside temperature says it's doing pretty good, which is interesting at 81. I thought once we got a little warmer, that wouldn't be quite as good as, maybe say 70. But that looks to be doing pretty good. And even when we've had it hotter, I've noticed the outside temperatures is higher than what I would have anticipated it being. But as you drive, the technique and the terrain, that will update as well to show you how you're doing regarding the energy usage. This screen shows the breakdown of the energy that you've used. Did you use it for driving, climate, settings, or other? And in this instance, it's of the total battery. It's if it was showing through from the charge till current, it would currently be 100% climate. But saying 1% of the battery we've used for climate as I've been sitting here, recording and looking at everything in the vehicle. And then this last tab, you have charging. So this is the tab where if you're using a level 1 charger, you can actually go in and tell it to switch it over to 12 amp, and then that'll apply until the next time you unplug and then plug back in, and then you have to reset it again. A little odd that you can't keep it on 12, but that's how this one works. And then you can do a charge mode. You can switch it over to based on your departure time, or delayed based on electric rates and that type of information. So you can go in and change that. So it's saying if I started charging now with a regular cord, I'd be done at 11, so it's a level 1 charger. If I'd be using a station, which would be a level 2 charger in this instance, because this thing can't handle a whole lot of charge, it would be done in just a couple minutes. And it only does, I believe, 15-minute increments. So, it's not really 11 o'clock and 10:45. It's probably before that, but saying no later than those times would it be complete. And we've used level 1 charger for a little while when we first got it, and then we purchased the level 2 charger that I'll review in another video. It's the Grizzly brand, and we've been pretty happy with that, but I'll go over that in another video. So I think that wraps up everything with the infotainment charging information. Now I'm going to go over a quick analysis of our EV usage for electric versus the gas mileage. So per my calculations, there's been a total of a little less than 14,000 miles driven on gas during the car's lifetime of a little over 6 years. The total EV, electric miles percentage is about 78%, and our electric miles represented 92% of the miles that we put on the vehicle. And that saved us between $500 and $1,000 a year by using the electric versus the gas. Definitely been a money saver for us. Also, it's a lot more fun, in my opinion, driving on electric. It's a continuous variable transmission, so there's no shifting or anything going on. And the electric just has a lot more torque and a lot more fun to drive than a typical gas engine. Again, in my opinion. All right, we're just going to look at the outside of the vehicle. It's a 4-door hatchback, so pretty standard looking, not very big though. Garage is about 30 feet. And you can see that certainly have stuff in front of it. and wanted to point out the charging. So this is a level 2 charger, and it's as easy as that to unplug, plug it in, you pop it open, and you do that. And that was just with one hand, so it's not very hard at all. And you can hear the beep, and you can see the indicator right here regarding how charged it is. So when it's blinking 4 times, that means it's 75 to 100%.
That concludes my review of the 2017 Chevy Volt plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Please remember to like and subscribe.